And welcome everyone to the Shitlord Preachers podcast. This is number 16. Now we're a couple. Yeah, I know, bro. A couple, couple things are a bit. We're kind of we're a little bit late, but we're all good here. So we just want to let you guys know we're actually having a special guest on today. But before that, just to kind of let you guys know what the stream is about. Once again, my name is Amos Joseph, joined by my friend Brook Potter here. We've known each other for a few years, and we used to be preachers. And as we sort of kind of moved away from the ministry path, we pretty much got into politics, and through some red pilling of our own and a lot of what's been going on lately, a lot of our discussions that we've been having, we felt would be really cool to have in some sort of format where people can participate as well as just listen to the discussions we have, instead of us just talking away and being all selfish and stuff. Because so
keeping all that good stuff for ourselves, we need to share that shit, man.
Exactly. So we're a couple of shitlords, and we used to be preachers. So there's the name right there. So yeah, I am here in Minnesota, joined by Brook, who is in the Twin Island Nation. Right?
Trinidad and Tobago, yes.
Go ahead, Brook. Introduce yourself a bit.
All right. I think it's stuck on you for the video, so only people are seeing my small caption. It's not shifting for some reason.
It's shifting for me. I can see.
Oh, is it? Okay, it wasn't working for. But yes, as my good friend Amos said, my name is Brook Potter, originally from Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean. 2016, I moved out to London in the UK, and I started to make a life for myself there. But moving is a process, so I'm back and forth. And yeah, very much what Amos said, that, we used to see a lot of these kinds of discussions that we see in the political arena, a lot of the cognitive dissonance and a lot of the narrative spinning and other things. We just thought that this was a much more important thing. While, religion is definitely important for people, politics can affect a nation, a civilization, and otherwise. And we really felt like this was where we needed to have our conversations. And it's led to some great connections. I'm looking forward to hearing our speaker today, Josh. He runs a fantastic Twitter page, and I know he's got a YouTube channel. No videos up yet. I'm disappointed.
Yeah, we're working on it. I'll when he gets to me, I'll go in.
You'll explain that.
Yeah. Right. So for those of you guys who are joining us, definitely seeing that we're joined today by Josh, who runs the Sarcasm and Liberty Twitter page, as well as the YouTube channel, pending videos. I kind of connected with Josh after connecting with, of course, the Happy Supremacy, Nico and Shane a while back when we did a stream. I did a stream with them, connected with Josh, and then have connected with a lot of people in those different circles. So we're definitely going to be having more guests as we move forward. So introduce yourself, Mr. Sarcasm and Liberty, Josh.
Well, as some of you might not know, the Sarcasm Liberty is also a Facebook page and a website.
Right.
So we actually started off as Sarcasm Liberty is founded by me and my older brother Jason, and we, for the most part, it's just mostly us two running it. We have other people that pitch in with memes and things like that here and there, articles and such like that. But it started off as just a Facebook page, and the original name was I set it up as the Sarcastic Libertarian, and then I realized there already was a Sarcastic Libertarian, so I was like, well, I don't want to, be a copycat, and this guy had way more, and he runs a good page. He had way more followers. It's like, I don't think we're gonna get caught up to that anytime soon. So as a placeholder, I just changed it to Sarcasm and Liberty, because when I was setting up emails and stuff, I just used sarcasm.liberty or sarcasm_liberty just to make it easier, because trying to do Sarcastic Libertarian was either too long or always already taken. So I just did that as a placeholder. We set up a Twitter account that we didn't touch for the longest time. And then the page, just nothing happened with it for years. And then we decided to go back and start actually trying to invest in it a bit. And we were like, well, should we change it to something else? And we're like, no, Sarcasm Liberty is kind of growing on us. We like it now. So it's and I feel like it perfectly describes just what the page and the Twitter account and everything is about is just, it's all about liberty and freedom and like, these libertarian values, but it's also about just being sarcastic and having fun. So we do the best of both worlds there. But yeah, the Facebook page is just Sarcasm and Liberty, just like the Twitter account. I mostly run the Twitter account, while my brother mostly runs the Facebook page. And then we have sarcasmandliberty.com, which is our website, where we post all of our original memes. We post articles that either we've written or we've had guest people write, which we're always looking for guest writers. So anybody that ever wants to write an article for it is always welcome to. And then we have just started the YouTube channel. So on Saturdays, we're going to be doing our own podcast, live stream type thing. It's going to start off just me and my brother talking politics and stuff like that. And then eventually we're going to try to bring in some guests here and there. So it'll be more like a podcast formula. And then the plan is to, at least just for start, doing that every Saturday. And then we'll see what happens from there. But we also want to put up some other just original videos and stuff like that. I think most of the original videos will probably be my brother doing it, because he's able to figure that stuff out better than I am. I'm mostly just a writer kind of guy. So I stick to my writing. Like if you see any of the memes that we put out, like the original memes that'll have the Sarcasm Liberty logo, a lot of times I'll come up with captions or ideas for them. But as far as like actual meme creation, that's pretty much almost always my brother. Because I just like he's really good at making memes, and he's actually he makes memes for more than just our page. But he does really well at that, and we've gotten some really, really popular ones too. Like I don't know, we've had some ones that have just taken off. Liberty Memes recently posted one of ours on Facebook, and like that ended up having like almost 2,000 reactions to it and stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. But yeah, as far as just it's just me and him, mostly just kind of goofing off and having fun, but also trying to at the same time making people think. If you see any time to get into it on Twitter, I'll have Twitter debates frequently. And it's kind of nice now because like what we said, and a goal of ours is to, like, if we post a meme or we post just a statement or something like that, and then we come back to it like a day later, a few minutes later, and there's all these people talking, that's our goal there. Like, that's what we want to see. We want to see people having a discussion, whether or not they agree with us. Like I always say, I thank the people who have dissenting opinions, whether or not I might poke fun at them. I thank them for that, because, debate is good for the soul. We don't want to run an echo chamber. We want to run a page and accounts where, people are having these conversations. We'll join in on one side usually, because we're going to argue against, we're going to argue for what we think is right, for sure. But, we don't delete people. We don't block people. We welcome that kind of actual debate, where people are actually engaging in conversation. I feel like that's what we need more of.
That's amazing. Josh, could you share quickly a little bit about your history then? Were you always libertarian?
Oh, yeah.
Just give us a brief synopsis of your story.
Well, I grew up in a very conservative household. So for a long time, I was very conservative.
Like Republicans, conservative, evangelical?
Yeah. Okay, my parents are kind of evangelical. I'm not. I never quite got that far.
Sure,
but I grew up with very, I was of the mind, when we went to war, I was a supporter of going to war with Iraq and all this stuff, and I made up, I was one with people arguing for, yeah, it's a good thing that we're going and all this stuff. And that was me going into the military. I went into the military. I went to basic training 12 days after I graduated high school. I went straight into the Army.
Wow.
But, and in the Army, a lot of people have conservative values, a lot of other people there. So when you're, I went from being in kind of one bubble to then another bubble, pretty much. It took me a while. There were things, though, a lot of things in the conservative just a lot of conservative propaganda out there that started to really like rub me wrong after a while. Like a lot of it was the war on drugs, like marijuana is evil and all this stuff. And, you know, like once the California, I remember like, this is when I had already like kind of left the whole Republican stuff behind. But I remember like the day after marijuana became legal in Colorado, there were Republican newsletters putting out like about like kids overdosing on marijuana and all this stuff, and I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. And sure, it happens the day after. Like, it was just ridiculous. I was like,
Sure.
you know, I would get frustrated with stuff like that. I feel like a whole like gay marriage was just a losing battle. Like, and this was an argument I would get into a lot with religious people. Like, and I would typically not like to have my discussion of like gay marriage with people, because my thing was always like, you shouldn't be asking the government for permission. And I feel like wanting it to be legalized is saying that the government has the right to illegalize it. And I don't think the government should have anything to do with marriage. But that was like a whole nother story. One of my thing I would always talk to like religious friends and people like that would be like, well, if you feel like, if in your mind it's wrong, shouldn't you want those people to not go down that path because they choose to, as opposed to not going down that path because they have no choice?
Correct.
You know, and I feel like that was one of the things I would always like, you know, that put me pretty much against the anti-gay marriage people, was like, you know, if in your heart you believe, which, you know, I don't agree. I want to make sure that's stated. I don't agree. But if in your heart you believe that homosexuality is wrong, you should want those people to come around to your way of thinking by their own free will, not because they don't have a choice to. It would be things like that. Like it was a lot of like pushing your own specific, you know, and conservatives are really guilty of this because we have a lot of morality laws because of them. It's pushing their own specific morality through the law, as opposed to saying, you know, we want people to think this way because it's the right way to think, not because, you know, we're trying to push like the force, you know, people have to believe, like act and behave the way we want them to behave. And I took exception to a lot of that, you know, after a while. And my brother that I run the Sarcasm and Literary page with, he is libertarian, and I'm not exactly sure how long he's been libertarian for. He's been a lot longer than me. And he was one that, like, we'd have conversations on the phone all the time. Political talk will go on for hours. And, you know, after a while, like, he would suggest people like Ron Paul and all this and that to me. And at one point I found Adam Kokesh on Twitter or on YouTube. I found some of his videos, and, like, you know, he was like too extreme for me at that time of my transition. Right. But there were some things he said, you know, that really stuck out to me. And, you know, I got to reading some Ron Paul, and the more I kind of like dug into these ideas and stuff, and it was just the idea of, like, you know, just let people be who they want to be, let people act how they want to act, you know, as long as you're not interfering with somebody's like specific freedom, like, you know, you should have the freedom to live your life how you want, you know. And it just made more and more sense to me. And so I slowly began this transition, and I would say there are probably some conservative things I'm still like to this day trying to shake off, but you know, it was, you know, it's been a few years for me now. I'd say like 4 or 5 years, probably about 5 years now since I would say I've like officially been like considering myself libertarian. But yeah,
that's great, man.
So one of the things I was curious, because I know you mentioned a little bit ago, was do you never want to mute or block anyone on your Twitter? Now, you want to quickly share, I guess, some of the bigger Twitter accounts that have blocked you?
Oh,
interesting exchanges.
Yeah. Okay. Like, here's the thing. I have, to this day, I've muted one Twitter account, and it was because they're a bot. It's not even a real Twitter account, and they kept going back like 1 year ago to some Twitter thing scuffle I was having with somebody. And they would just keep liking and unliking like the same 3 tweets over and over. I would get these notifications every single day, sometimes more than once a day. And it was just getting annoying. So I was like, this is not even a real person. So I just muted it. So I'd stop getting those notifications. But yeah, I don't like blocking people. like, typically when it comes to trolls, eventually they'll find somebody else to go pick on, to go bother. And then we're also big enough now, if trolls really try to start coming after the page, other people start jumping in too and like going after them. So they don't really get like just to just pressure me, and eventually I can just like leave it alone, and other people are fighting for it, and I don't even have to worry about it anymore. Oh shit, that's not good. Hold on.
Oh, but something terrible's happened.
No, my computer just decided telling me it wanted to restart. Like, no.
Would you like to update to Windows 10?
So for as far as pages that have blocked me, like, because I will get into it with all these different pages, and sometimes I'm abrasive, sometimes I'm trying to be as like respectful as possible, but like, so a lot of the times the pages that have blocked me, I'm pretty amazed at like how little it takes to get them to block me. Liberty Hangouts have blocked me, which for them I was calling them out on their, anybody who doesn't support Trump is a communist comments. Like, I thought that was stupid, and then they got mad that I was like arguing back, and then they blocked me.
Now, real quick, who is Liberty Hangouts for the viewers?
Okay, Liberty Hangout is like they have a Twitter, and I believe they have a Facebook too. They're like the far extreme right of libertarianism, and I don't even feel like you can call them libertarianism. They're just basically straight up conservative right wing, but they try to call themselves libertarian, and they've even claimed that they're not libertarian. They just want to like infiltrate libertarianism and make it conservative. It's insane. And yeah, they post some really bizarre shit. Then there's the Dankritarians, and if like the Dankritarians are the like opposite end of the spectrum of Liberty Hangout, they are the far left wing, like socialist, these socialist libertarians, and that's how they even like label themselves. Yeah, it's insane. It's such an oxymoron. But they blocked me because they posted some really stupid meme, and I was like, you guys are so far left that you can't meme, and then they got mad at me. There was
left can't meme.
Left can't meme.
There was some other like small interaction, but like they, as soon as like they realized they were losing ground on the argument, they like immediately blocked me. I think they just blocked me. They went and they blocked a whole bunch of other people like associated with my page. The guy that runs it, like he just went on, like he just threw an absolute fit. But yeah, like if you ever look up like the Dankritarians, like it's insane. Like they're the people that believe like rent is theft, and property is theft, and all these like asinine things that make absolutely no sense. And then when you try to like have them explain it, it makes even less sense. Like like there's a Twitter thing going on now with this guy trying to say that rent is theft, and just the more they explain it, the less sense it makes. Because they're like, well, people don't have a choice. They either have to rent or be homeless. I'm like, well, okay, no, you always have a choice, but just because you might not have any other opportunities other than renting doesn't make rent theft. Like that's an insane.
Correct.
Like as if like if you have a house that you're renting out and somebody either has to rent or be homeless, you're doing the wrong thing unless you just give them that house. I'm like, well, then that's not libertarianism at all. Like, that's just straight up socialism. And that's like, it still doesn't make sense to call it theft. You're not actively stealing from somebody by renting them a house. And there are perks to renting too. I was actually having this conversation with somebody else, like completely separate from that thread, about, there are perks to renting as opposed to owning your own home. Like
correct.
I own my house, but I was saying like, I do miss the days of something breaks in my house and you just call the landlord and say, hey, can you come fix this? Shit like that. And there's downsides to renting, there's downsides to home ownership sometimes too. Like, but just to call one theft is just insane. These people go crazy with some of the stuff. Like they just have these outrageous ideas, and then they act like everybody else besides them are the crazy ones. It's amusing to watch, at the very least. It's amusing to watch.
I'm sure it is. I've never heard that about the renting is theft thing. But I mean, like even for myself, like I'm buying 4 properties right now for rental income, but I rent.
Yeah.
Right? And I live in London, right? One of the most expensive cities in the world.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, why don't you buy a house? I'm like, are you out of your mind? A
Yeah.
house is an expense, right? I'm living on the cheap. I'm living in like a broom closet, and I'm fine.
Yeah.
I don't need
Yeah.
more than that, you know?
Well, and it's because the first time I heard Rent the Theft, I thought it was just a meme, you know?
Right.
Because like for Sarcasm Liberty, if you go to our page, and I posted all of the memes we have for it on Twitter yesterday because of a Rent the Theft was going on. We have we call it the Utopian Caucus, and it's a series of memes of just everything is theft. There was one of like price tags are rape, and like everything is theft, and I can't remember what all of them are, but they're really funny.
Crazy.
Yeah, go if you go to the sarcasmliberty.com and then look for the Utopian Caucus on the main page, you'll see it. It's our parody of the Socialist Caucus from like the Dankatarians and stuff. It's amusing.
Crazy. I mean, I see like there's a kid's drawing in the back. So you're married with kids, is that right?
Yes. Yeah. I have 2 kids. I have a 7-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. And I married. Me and my wife, coming this May, will have been together for 10 years and married for 9.
Amazing. Did she know your political transition?
Yeah. Actually, when we met, I was far more conservative. My wife she just abstains from all politics.
Good woman. Good.
Yeah, she just doesn't get involved in it. I mean, like in the first election, she voted for her first election that I knew her. She voted for Obama, and she knew I didn't like Obama, but she was like, "Well, I feel like he's the best guy for the job." And then afterwards, she was like, "Well, I feel like I got ripped off." And then when I was in the next one, I was still like kind of conservative, so I ended up voting for Mitt Romney, and then she voted for Mitt Romney too.
Right.
And then after in this last election, she was like, "I don't know who to vote for because Donald Trump is insane and Hillary Clinton's like the worst person imaginable. Like, who the fuck would I vote for?" And I was like, "Well, here, look at Gary Johnson. Like, he's not the ideal libertarian candidate. You know, like there are other people I would have rather had, but just look at what he has to say." So she looked into him. She looked into libertarianism as a whole after that, and then she was like, I feel like now, like, I've always been libertarian. I just didn't know that was the word for it.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Now, like, as it stands, we're kind of like our household is like libertarian. My daughter in this last presidential election, her school did a mock election, and she comes home and asks, "Well, who are you guys voting for?" And I'm like, "Well, we're voting for Gary Johnson." She's like, she didn't
Who's that?
Gary, yeah, kind of thing. So we didn't just say like, "Well, we're voting for Gary Johnson," because we're like, "Well, we're voting for Gary Johnson, for these reasons, and we feel like he's the best person right now for the country." And we explain the whole like concepts of like some vague libertarian concepts, and values that we traditionally try to like instill in her anyway. So she goes to school and she votes Gary Johnson in the mock election at school. She was the only person in the entire kindergarten through 8th grade school that voted Gary Johnson.
Amazing.
Yeah. So we were very proud of her for sticking to her guns. Like, when nobody else was voting that way, she was just like, "Well, I'm still going to vote for Gary Johnson."
Come on.
Yeah.
Good girl.
Yeah. She's interesting. Like, we read there's this series of children's books called Tuttle Twins, and they're like libertarian values and like libertarian themed books written for kids between like the ages of like 5 and 11, I think. And I got them for her. Like, we got them when they were like crazy on sale. Like, if anybody who ever wants those books, follow the Tuttle Twins on Facebook. They always have these crazy sales where you can get them either like sometimes you can get the first book for free, or you can get them all for like 40% off or 60% off. Like, they always have these crazy sales. But we started reading them to her, and at first she didn't like it because a lot of it's just these 2 kids talking to people, like adults and stuff, about stuff. She thought it was kind of boring at first, but pretty much at the end of every single page, we'd stop and have a conversation. You know, I would want to talk to her, like, you know, like, do you understand what that means? Do you understand what this guy's saying? Do you understand? How do you feel about this? You know, and then like we just like we can't get through one book in a night because, you know, if I just read straight through, I could read one book in one night, but typically doesn't happen because we stop and have so many conversations back and forth. I mean, at this point, like, she understands what an economy is. She understands profits and stuff like that because I take her to comic conventions and she sells her artwork there. So she's learned how to make money, manage money. She has to take money out of what she earns to pay for the cost of the table and art supplies. So she understands the concept of profits and stuff like that. You know, at 7 years old, she's figuring all this out. Amazing. But there are, like, you know, a lot of people, I've had people like, well, it's just propaganda for kids. I'm like, well, it depends on how you approach it. Because one conversation, like, I'll challenge her on things. And there's one about taxing the rich. And I was like, I explained it to her, you know, do you think it's fair? You know, should rich people, because they have more money, pay more in taxes than these other people that don't have it? And she's like, no, that's not fair. So I was like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, that's the answer I definitely wanted to hear. But I wanted to make sure she's not just saying what she thinks I might want to hear.
Yes.
So I challenged her on it. I was like, well, Zoe, these rich people have way more money. You know, they can spare it. You know, it's fine if they, you know. I started arguing for the other side, and she was very firm on, no, it's not fair if, you know, these people pay more just because they have more. You know, that's just not fair. So I was like, that's, you know, it's good. You know, like, that's the kind of, you know, I don't want her to ever, like, believe things just because I believe them. You know, I want her to believe them because she really deep down believes that that's the right thing. So I always try to challenge her, and I always would tell other people, you know, if you're teaching your kids politics, do that. Challenge them on their politics. Challenge them on their beliefs. Don't let your kids just follow in suit. You know, don't just have them regurgitate what you think and believe.
That's amazing.
Propaganda, I tell you.
Yeah. No, it's always like, there was one thing where this guy was like, kids are too stupid to understand the like concept in these books. I'm like, do you have kids? Like, my daughter's 7 years old. She understands so much of these books. Like, I might have originally thought the same thing, but I'm like, you know, like, here's the thing: kids are both stupid and incredibly intelligent at the same time. Kids, like, they don't understand a lot of stuff. You know, there's just big world concepts that they just can't grasp. But at the same time, if you sit down and you talk with your kid and you explain things to them, and you know, my daughter is very intelligent. She sees things like, she'll say things too, like, and just that blew me away. Like, her, my wife's father passed away a couple years ago, and he was an organ donor. And my wife was trying to explain to my daughter what that meant, you know, what an organ donor meant. So my daughter comes later and she says, well, when a flower dies, you know, and it passes its seeds on, so you can take those seeds and you can plant it and make new flowers. That's like what my grandpa did.
Come on.
And then we were like, that's like crazy that you would even like come to that like analogy on your own. Like, I was like, that is the most beautiful way of putting it I think I've ever heard. And it came out of a 6-year-old at the time. Like, you know, kids, they're a lot smarter than we get them credit for. But then there's also like the things you'll see on, like, I don't like posting some things that my daughter says politically, because a lot of people will post these, like, my 9-year-old daughter came up to me and like said they hate Trump and like said all these crazy things that you're like, yeah, that definitely did not happen. Or if it did happen, they're just regurgitating what you want them to believe, you know?
Yeah.
Like, there's so much of that. So I try not to like get too into like what my daughter says politically, but you know, she does say some very like interesting things. And I always try to make sure though, like when it comes to my kids, that they're not saying anything that they think I want to hear. I did a video, because the redheaded libertarian did one. It was when those two lawmakers were trying to make the law for the Tide Pods to make it Tide Pods. Tide would have to change. Yeah, it was insane. So I didn't have Tide Pods. I had Cascade Pods. And the redheaded libertarian did a video like this too. But I was like, well, my kids are even younger than hers, so I want to do the same video. So I took these Cascade pods I had, and I sat my 2 kids down, and I asked them, I was like, does it look like candy? And my daughter was like, yeah, a little bit. She's like, do you want to eat it? And she's like, no, like, that's ridiculous. So they were both my kids were like, no, that's, that would make me sick. I don't want to eat it. So then I asked my daughter, I was like, do you need the government to tell you? And then like, she kind of cuts her sentence off, but like what she ended up saying was just like, no, we don't need the government. And then she just stopped there, and people thought that was hilarious.
So what you're saying is,
yeah,
your kids should dictate gun policy,
right?
I might actually trust his kids rather than some of those politicians.
No, that's something like
crisis actors.
I want to take my kid shooting sometime to like get her familiar with guns, and like so she doesn't have this like fear of them.
Wait. What is your position on the Second Amendment, so we can get a frame for this whole conversation?
I'm fully pro Second Amendment.
You think babies should be born with guns? I do.
Yeah, no, like I've never wavered on my support for the Second Amendment. I feel like there are a lot of statistics out there that get skewed in like when it comes to the co-op debate, and then there are a lot of like just some of the things I see, like anti-gunners typically just flat out don't understand guns, and it shows. Like I don't want these people who are obviously fear-mongering to be making policy when it comes to my ability to protect my family. Like you got Dianne Feinstein, which she is just the absolute worst when it comes to the anti-gun stuff. I mean, she was like, had her finger on the trigger and was pointing the barrel at the crowd when she's trying to explain stuff. And you got Hillary Clinton saying like, we don't need silencers, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, they're not silencers, they're suppressors, and they're still loud as shit when you use them, like these people who just legitimately don't understand firearms in the slightest bit. And they're like, these are the people that want to make, gun laws for us. I'm like, I'd rather these people who actually understand weapons and stuff like that make those laws. But no, I'm very, very pro Second Amendment, and that's never wavered for me. I feel like it needs to be, on just the typical libertarian stance. People have a right to defend themselves.
So like old school Second Amendment rights?
Yeah.
Tanks, battleships, cannons, miniguns.
Wait, here's the thing.
Nukes.
People do like to bring up like, oh, if it's, then like if the Second Amendment is this and that, then what, I should be allowed to have a nuke.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you afford a nuke? Yeah. Can you afford a nuke though? Because like sure we can make nukes for everyone if you can purchase one.
Let alone they might charge you through the roof to like go through training.
Right.
Handle that.
Yeah, like people talk like if we took this position and like, yeah, everybody should be allowed to have a tank if they want one, that people would just somehow tanks would become like they're going to be tank shops, like car dealerships everywhere, or something like that. Like you guys are insane. Like you seem to have this like just vast misunderstanding of how reality works. Like making something legal doesn't make it, one, easily affordable and also easily accessible,
Correct. I mean, you can get tanks. I mean, the Army surplus. Yeah. I mean, not like the Bradleys and stuff like that, but I mean, you could get the older ones if you really wanted it.
I mean, there's already like laws against driving tanks on roads anyway, so it's not like.
Not in Russia, though. I love Russia. That's a whole other story. But
no, when I was in the Army, we did like convoys and stuff. We had to learn like roads that you could and couldn't take tanks on and stuff like that because of tank treads will fuck up a road, like fuck them up hardcore.
So when I was talking to you, Josh, I know we talked about when we talked before the stream a while back. A few times we've talked in between. One of the things I really wanted to have you on for was to kind of talk about the whole healthcare thing, kind of sharing our different experiences. I know you have a lot of great stories from the VA, which only covers such a small part of our population for being universal healthcare, I guess, in that sense.
Yeah.
I guess I guess go ahead and give us a little rundown of what is the VA and why is it such a great system in the government?
Well, I've often said the VA is a prime example of why I am against universal or government-run healthcare in the United States. I have been going to the VA for.
Define what the VA is, because not everybody knows.
Oh, okay. Well, the VA is the Department of Veteran Affairs. Right. It's the government branch that basically handles all of the veteran affairs. One of the more popular aspects of it is the VA hospital, which is a hospital, clinics, all things run by the government that provide healthcare for veterans.
Free healthcare.
Free healthcare.
Right.
There's actually a lot of things. Like, it's not just you can have served in the military and get free healthcare. They're like for me, I'm service connected, which means that like I have injuries that are connected to my time in the service, which means like all of my care related specifically to those injuries is free. But for a lot of veterans, you can still have to use like health insurance through the VA and stuff like that. Depending on like what if you don't have any like specific injuries. But like the VA, I've been going for I would say like 9 years now. I think maybe probably a little longer than that actually. No, about 9 years. And it just like I have a myriad of like health conditions, and I've been to 4 different VA hospitals. No, 5 different VA hospitals. And I've always have some ups and downs. You know, there's always some good things I can say, but there's always a lot of bad things I can say. It just progressively seems to get worse. So like the bad stuff always stands out so much because it's always so incredibly bad. And a lot of what I could say, like, you know, bad about the VA, people will be like, oh yeah, people in the private sector deal with that too. And I'm like, yeah, but also the private sector has a massive amount of people to deal with. The VA has a small amount of people to deal with compared to the private sector.
Sure.
Now, the government, it shouldn't be any news to anybody. The government is just full of bureaucracy and just like, you know, weighed down by paperwork and red tape. And that's part of the problem is like, just, you know, okay, when some of my health problems first started up, like my back problems got really bad. I was working at Fort McCoy at the time in Wisconsin. And I wanted to, you know, I wasn't able to go into work. So they did the FMLA paperwork where, you know, I could stay home and not get fired for that.
Right.
So I talked to my doctor and she's like, yeah, that makes sense. Blah, blah, blah. We'll take care of that. So then she sends it to my employer that I can come into work. I'm fine, basically. Like, you know, completely different from what we talked about. Right. So I was like, well, that's not going to work for me. You know, so my employer at the time was on the verge of firing me. So I call the VA and I talk to them and I'm like, they're like, okay, well, we'll have to get, you know, you to see a different doctor. That'll take 6 to 8 weeks. I'm like, yeah, I have until the end of this week. And they're just like, no, it takes 6 to 8 weeks just to find a different doctor. You know, it didn't matter to them that there was a time crunch, you know. It was just, and here's the thing, like people could throw me all the reasons in the world of why, yes, it does take 6 to 8 weeks. But I write a letter to my congressman that night. He calls me, somebody from his office calls me later that evening. The next day I get a call from the VA saying, yeah, you can come see a new provider tomorrow.
Right.
Obviously, it doesn't take that long, you know, like they can shuffle paperwork around and make things go a lot faster than they say it does. But that's just how the government runs, though, you know, it's at minimum capacity. It's just making things take as long as possible. There's just, I mean, I could go on stories upon stories, but I think the big one is from last February. Now, I had herniated discs in my spine, and I was dealing with problems with that for a while. And I was having really bad nerve pain in my leg. Now, one night, it just suddenly out of the blue got so much worse. It was like I was in an incredible amount of pain. progressively got worse. It got to the point where like I couldn't stand up, I couldn't sit down, I couldn't lay down.
Wow.
I was in this like hunched over position on my knees with one of my legs like put up onto the couch and like the corner of our couch. And that was the only position I could be in that wasn't like the absolute worst pain imaginable. And I had to like pee in this jug. Like my wife got me this like urinal thing to pee in because I couldn't get up to go to the bathroom. Now we called my doctor and she's like, "Oh, well, we'll just increase his gabapentin," which like for what I was dealing with just
okay.
just meant nothing.
I know what gabapentin is.
Yeah.
It's pretty much what it's a pretty hardcore like painkiller. So my dad actually took that before he passed away. That was the thing that really messed him up.
Oh,
it almost made him delirious and everything. It was just such a strong drug.
And no,
for
like
nerve pain.
Yeah, for me, like actually, my body metabolizes medicines in a weird way. Like, standard dosages just like do nothing for me. Like my doctors always have a hard time finding a medication and a dosage that actually works because I just shit just never works right for me. But she wanted to increase my gabapentin, but I'm like, even then, like that just wasn't enough. You know, like that wasn't going to do anything because what I was going through is a very acute condition at that point. It wasn't, excuse me, I wasn't like just adjusting it to fit the chronic condition I had. This was completely different. It was like a whole new pain. So my wife, I'm like just in the worst possible way. I'm not eating food. I'm not drinking. I'm not sleeping. So she takes me into the VA to the ER. They want me to go home. Okay. And I'm in so much pain. I'm crying. I'm like yelling at points. I'm just like, I'm like delirious almost. They wanted me to go home and wait it out. This was on a Saturday. They're like, go home, wait till Monday, and then call your doctor and see if maybe they can get you in for an MRI. And I was at this point where like just living was like, I'd actually crossed the threshold into hurting myself. My leg was in so much intense pain. I was like punching my leg to try to like somehow like give me a different kind of pain. Like it wasn't even logical at that point. I was like beyond logic and reasoning. You know, I was just like, I was out of my mind in pain. And these people wanted me to go home. And like my wife is like, well, call his like, you know, they're like, well, we can't give him anything because of this opioids agreement thing that the VA does. And she's like, well, call his doctor. We can't call his doctor because it's a Saturday. Well, have another doctor come in. Well, we can't do that. It was just all these excuses of why they can't do this. They can't do that. And my wife, she sat there and argued with them for like 5.5 hours, you know, and it was like a hostage negotiation. They kept coming in and saying, well, we'll do this. My wife was like, no, not good enough. And at one point she was like, we will not leave here until you've done something for my husband, you know? And I was like, man, she freaked them out when she said that because the VA is not used to people wanting to stay there, you know?
Yeah.
But you know, it was very intense, you know, because they just didn't seem to care, you know, like I was laying there in so much pain. I don't remember what this one nurse said. I mean, like she came in and like she pissed off my wife too. I don't remember what she said, but like I remember snapping at her and like screaming at her to get out of the room. Like she was like, okay, like I've dealt with my share of just shitty asshole nurses, but like this one, she took the cunt cake. Like she just was the worst person. I was just like infuriated, but yeah. So like eventually my wife was like, well, we're gonna do an ER to ER transfer, and the VA is like, yeah, you're free to take him to any ER you want to. And my wife was like, no, you're putting in a transfer because I know how this works. If we take him, you're going to try to be like, oh, they took him to a different ER. We're not responsible for it, kind of thing. So they put in the transfer, and then they sent me to a Lutheran hospital, which was like it was down the street from where we live. So I'm in there, and these people come in, and the nurse was like, excuse me. Then attending doctor comes in, and they're asking me questions. Now, here's one of the questions they never asked me at the VA. They never asked me whether or not I was suicidal. Now, not asking mental health questions, it's standard in the VA that pretty much now every appointment, even if it's a standard checkup, they ask you if you're suicidal. That's just a question that they always ask. Now, me being in that much pain and them not having asked me that question was like a huge no-no, like a huge big deal, because, like if I would have killed myself, the VA could have been liable for just not caring, basically. But so the doctor comes in, she asks me some questions at the civilian hospital. And the last question she asks me, are you suicidal? And I'm like, at this specific moment, no, but I am losing hope incredibly fast. Like, I genuinely feel like if it hadn't been for my wife, it hadn't been for those people at that hospital, I would have gotten to the point of killing myself. Like, I was in so much pain. I was like, I'd already crossed to the point of just hitting myself to try to distract myself from pain, like, ability to reason and be rational, like, so fast. And I was in so much pain, like all I could really think about was I can't deal with this pain that much longer, and the VA wanted me to go home and wait it out, but at the civilian hospital, they admit me. The first thing they do is start giving me medication to help with the pain, which is what the VA absolutely refused to do, was give me any kind of medication to help with the pain. That's the first thing this hospital does. Then they have somebody come in and they're like, well, we're going to have you do an MRI. I'm like, okay, but I can't lay flat on my back, So they schedule me for this one MRI. Like, it's this big open one, It's not like the little closed-in one you're used to. This is really big open one. And I was able to sit on my back and have my legs arched up in a way that was less painful. And then they also gave me like a shot of morphine and Ativan right before I went in.
Wow.
So I remember them pulling me out of the machine and like, how are you doing? And I'm like, I actually feel pretty good right now. Yeah. So, but that's something the VA wouldn't do. They won't medicate you to go into an MRI. And also they would, if I had done the MRI through the VA, they would have forced me into the small one.
The small one, yeah.
And I wouldn't have been able to do it. And then they would have just held that at my, like it would have been that much longer going through red tape to try to get me into an MRI machine. But they bring me out and they come back with the test results and they're like, all right, we need to put you into surgery like as soon as possible. Because they're like, your back is so messed up, it's causing you so much pain. We need to get you into surgery ASAP. And they have a surgeon come in and talk to me. I was in that hospital from the day I walked into, the day we got like parked into that parking lot to the day we left that parking lot. 5 days passed. And that included MRI, that included surgery, and that included recovery time, and like a physical therapist talking to me, like, them assigning me like a back brace and all this stuff. So 5 days, in and out. And the VA, like, they just don't want to do shit, and that's because they have this red tape, and they just have this lack of empathy and lack of care overall. But like I see that, like, me going through that. And here's where it really hits home is the day I was still in the hospital. I was still in the civilian hospital when my wife finds an article of a veteran who, and it was so scary because it was exactly the same thing that happened to me. Right. Exact same situation at the VA. The only difference is that they were very new to the VA. They didn't know how that they could, like, like the spouse wasn't able to like argue the way mine was, because mine's like a veteran of the VA herself. She knows how to like, what rights that we have as a veteran and the spouse. So this guy ended up killing himself.
Wow,
because the pain was just too much. And I was like, it was haunting because I saw myself in that situation. I'm like, that could have so easily been me, and I think I'm just one guy, and if you look at the statistics, there's like, I don't know if it's changed recently, but 22 veterans a day commit suicide. Yeah. And you think of how many of it's because these people just aren't getting help, and then think of how many, I don't know what I should, I wish I could look up the stats right now. I don't know what the stats are on, like what percentage of the population are veterans, but that's still just a fraction of the population that are veterans.
Yeah.
This is the government not being able to handle a fraction of its population. You know, like so many people get left to the wayside. So many people just are, you know, like, well, we can't do this or we can't do that. You know, it can't handle the entirety of this nation, like government-run healthcare in the United States. And people will always want to bring up other countries. And I'm like, that's fine and dandy. Even if government-run healthcare works perfectly in another country, which I know it doesn't, even if it does, we're talking about the United States, run by the United States government, that does nothing good. You know, like it doesn't run anything well. Everything it touches, it fucks up. How can you possibly argue that they should handle healthcare? And then, one final thing on it is a lot of people will bring up that, like, oh no, we're not talking about the government running healthcare. We're talking about like a government-run health insurance. It's different. I'm like, guess what? There is something called the Choice Program that is very similar to that. Right. And then there's TRICARE insurance, which literally is government-run health insurance. And ask somebody that uses TRICARE how much they love TRICARE. You know, they're actually to the point they're getting turned down from doctors because TRICARE just doesn't pay. TRICARE won't pay off its like what it owes. Like it's a shitty system. And like that's the thing. The government just doesn't do things well. Like it doesn't run things, and you know it doesn't do things like in a efficient manner. It just doesn't. And there's so many. Like my mom works for the post office, and she'd be one of the first people to say, like, the post office runs things like ridiculously. They make stupid decisions. They don't do things smart. You know, like there's a reason the post office is trying to catch up to the U.S. UPS and FedEx. It's because the government handles that. You know, and things that the government handles just are always fucked up and never run efficiently. So, like, it boggles my mind that you'd have somebody that would sit there and say, like, yeah, I want the government, the U.S., not just the government, the United States government, to run my healthcare. I'm like, that is a mind-blowing statement in my mind because they don't do things efficiently. That's how they operate. You know, they'd rather tell a guy who's in an extreme amount of pain to go home and wait it out than to just push him through and figure out what's wrong with them. And that to me is like the defining difference between like public and private health care. Private health care has its problems, and I feel like a lot of the problems with private health care are because of government interference. You know, things of like insurance are abused, and like the way insurance is seen nowadays. You know, like me and Amos have talked before about like, you know, the small community things where you pay a membership fee as opposed to doing insurance, and then you don't have to deal with insurance ever again. Right. You know, there are other options out there we could do, but we're too busy. People are too busy thinking we need the government to take care of all of it. You know, to like look at some more viable solutions, and it's completely insane to me, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, you know, just to touch a little bit on this. I mean, this is something I've now confronted because I'm living in the UK, and it's the whole country is on the National Health Service, the NHS.
Yeah.
And the NHS it's the national religion of the UK, right? You cannot talk to a Brit about alternatives to health insurance without if you know, basically hitting your head upon dogma and that kind of thinking. And so I make the distinction. Like, I'm not opposed to universal coverage because I think you can do it through the free market, through charity. So I mean, like I had a bacterial infection a couple of years back in my home country, Trinidad and Tobago, and everybody was telling me to go to the government-run hospital, which is like we call it the general hospital. So everything's free. I said, no way I'm going to that hospital because I know it's going to take me 5 days to get diagnosed, another 5 days to get like a prognosis, and I'm going to be sitting in pain for like the duration. So I went to the private hospital. Within 20 minutes, they knew what was wrong. I was admitted, and I spent 2 days in the thing. Yeah, all right, so I paid for it. But I was sharing this with Amos. Like, we have 3 systems of healthcare. So you have private insurance. So, you know, most employers and so forth do that. We have the government-run hospital. So if you're absolutely destitute, you can go to one of these hospitals. You will wait, but you will get everything. The surgery, the medication, whatever it takes, for as long as it takes, but it's absolutely free. But then we have the charity hospitals. So we have like a very large Seventh-day Adventist group out here. I think a couple of the Catholic Church has like a volunteer hospital and stuff like that. So it's not free, but it's very, very cheap. So there's a lot of donations and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So between the three, everybody is actually covered. Now it's not planned that way. That's just kind of how it works. And I think that is a way that you could approach universal coverage without necessarily having single payer. I think single payer is the devil, right?
Yeah.
And as long as the government is paying the bill, it's just going to be a disaster.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Okay, like Amos, did I tell you some of my stories from working as a contractor of government waste? I can't remember.
Not. I know you kind of touched on not the contractor side, no.
Okay. Well, here's something. If you guys don't mind, I can try to shorten it so it's not too long. Okay, I have just so you know, I have an MRI at 2:30, so the longest I can go is another hour. I don't know how long we want to do that.
We like I said, we do about an hour and a half, so we got another half hour.
Fantastic.
We can go a little over, which is not the
I can't go any longer than an hour because then I have to leave to go do an MRI at the wonderful VA.
At least you got one. We got to wait like months to get an MRI.
Oh no, this took a while. Yeah. I think the initial request was like last year sometime. Okay, so for as far as government waste goes, like I talked about this with Nico and Shane on the HAPA supremacy. Like there are so many examples from my time working in the military, and then I worked as a government contractor for a few years. There are so many stories, so many things I saw that just blew my mind as to how much money the government just pisses away every day. And I'll tell this story again because I don't think you guys have heard it. And for anybody who didn't watch the HAPA supremacy live stream, part of my job when I worked at Fort McCoy was like when you have National Guard and reserves, Army reserves, they like for active duty Army, you pretty much have most of your equipment already. You already work at the military base every day. When it's time for you to deploy, you just get your deploying equipment and you go, kind of stuff. Like you're already there every day. Now for reservists, National Guard, they only go 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks out of the summer. That's it. So for them to be able to deploy, they have to go to a mobilization station. They go to a military base. They go do some training. They get all their equipment. They get everything in order for them to go, and then they deploy. And then when they're done, they have to come back to the demobilization station where they come back, they turn in all their equipment, they get all their ducks in a row and everything, then they're allowed to leave. Now, for Fort McCoy, for the logistics, I handled all of their demobilization. I was, we had in our office, there was probably like 6 or 8 different like mobilization people because the mobilization process took a lot longer than the demo process. Demo process could take like a week and a half. Mo process could take over a month.
Right.
So I would handle multiple units at a time. But, like my whole handling the demo stuff went a lot quicker. So there was something that it bothered me, and then I actually like brought it up too. But now you'd have these people, they would pack up their big 20-foot containers with all their equipment, right? Now here's the first thing that bothered me. You'd have a unit from Texas, right, that would fly into Wisconsin, where I'm at, to demo, and then go back home to Texas. Now they have a demo base in Texas. I was like, why don't you just send these assholes back to Texas? It makes way more sense. But no, we had to do it to Wisconsin. And a lot of the time, like this wasn't even like the official excuse. This was an excuse I heard that they gave me sometimes. It was to prevent soldiers from like trying to go home early kind of stuff.
Okay.
Ridiculous. But because then you're flying soldiers in to Wisconsin and then flying them back home to Texas. like rather than just flying them straight to Texas. It's just like a whole other flight. That's not even scratching the surface. Now, units would have their big ass 20-foot containers. You guys know what those look like, right? Like there's this huge ass, like big metal containers. So you'd have a unit demobilizing. Their containers come over on ship, and to come over on boat, it takes about 30 days. So their containers don't arrive when the unit arrives. So you'd have to have a unit. They would send out when the containers would finally arrive. They would send like a unit, like a small group of people back, because what we'd do is have to open them up. They'd have to take everything out. I would have to inspect all of it, and then they pack it all back up just to make sure there's no like contraband and shit like that, or to make sure that all the stuff that's supposed to be in there is actually in there. Now, here's where it gets ridiculous. Now, we'll go back to that example of like the unit from Texas, right? So you have the unit from Texas. They came to Fort McCoy in Wisconsin to demobilize, and then they all flew home to Texas. Now their container arrives at a port in Virginia.
Right.
Okay. And on the Brooke, I'm not sure how familiar you are with the U.S. geography, so let me know.
I know where Virginia is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just if I lose you, let me know.
No problem.
So, you would think, what would the logical scenario be? That these containers have to get home to Texas.
Go to Texas.
Send the containers to Texas. No. They by rail, or not by rail, I'm sorry. For Fort McCoy, we were just doing by trucks. They would load them up on trucks, and from Virginia, send them all the way to Wisconsin. And then they would have to take a small unit of people from Texas, fly them up to Wisconsin. They would unpack the containers, check them all out, we'd repack them. Then they ship those containers from Wisconsin to Texas, and then fly those same soldiers from Wisconsin back to Texas. Yeah. So we're talking a round trip for a group of roughly like 10 to 20 soldiers, and like per unit, I don't know, let's say like 4 to 6 containers, roughly average.
Sure.
Sometimes more, sometimes less. You know what? 4 to 6 is probably being too conservative. I would say 6 on average. So yeah, like rather than just shipping all that shit straight home to Texas and then having somebody at Texas do that, they do all this extra shit. Now, think of how much it costs to hire a company, and you can't just hire any, like it has to be a licensed and bonded truck company, you know, because if
certified.
Shit gets lost, you know, like that company can be held liable then. You got to ship all those containers all the way across country to Wisconsin. Then you have to pay for plane tickets for people to go up to Wisconsin, and then you got to pay for that shit to come back, and then you got to pay for plane tickets for those people to come back. Now, that is one scenario of one unit. That shit monthly would happen like 4 or 5 times.
Wow.
That's just one example. Imagine how in a year's time span, how many times that happened. And also, then keep in mind, we are just one mobilization, demobilization station. Right. There are multiples throughout the country that do this exact same thing for. It's insane.
Like there is one in Texas, right?
Yeah. No, we would get units coming home like to Wisconsin. Like we would be like have to deal with the same thing of we would have Wisconsin-based units that would demobilize at other stations, and we'd be like, why the fuck are we doing this? You know. Now sometimes if like the unit had enough political power, they could pull some strings and actually demo at their like station close to home, but it didn't happen often. Right. But that's just one example, you know. I'm like, that's one, like in my tiny world, one example from one state from just an average week out of the year, you know. Like imagine how much money is wasted yearly on all those stations. Now, I had brought it up before of like, why are we wasting so much money doing this? There's so many easier ways we could do it. And they're basically what it turned out to be like, they would have these contracts with these trucking companies to use these trucking companies for stuff. So what it ended up being was the government was pissing away money because they had to honor these contracts, like these shady contracts they had with these truck companies. You know, and that's what I always say. Like, I'm going to tell people, the government doesn't, like, they don't look at a budget ever. You know, they don't give a fuck about a budget. As long as they have tax money coming in, they feel like they can do whatever they want. They can make all these crazy deals that they want. They can just piss away money after month, like, you know, like it's nothing to them. You know, like, if you're a taxpayer, you should be more concerned about stuff like that. You know, you should be more concerned of, like, holy shit, how can they waste so much of my money? It could be going towards so much better, you know. Think of how much, if just that one unit, that 1 week went to Texas to demobilize instead, and their containers went to Texas. Just think of how much that one time, how much money could have been saved that one time. And then, you know, figure it out, like, do the math and then figure out how many times it's happened in a year and then across how many mobilization stations.
Correct.
And think of how much money in a year this nation pissed away on absolutely nothing. And not even like, and like, not like to, like, would have talked myself out of a job kind of thing, but it wasn't just the process of sending those containers. They had to pay me to be there. They had to pay people. They had to pay all this extra stuff, you know. They had to pay staff to do all this other shit, you know, like, it would turn out unnecessary. You know, there are probably a lot of government jobs that are well, not probably. There are definitely a lot of government jobs that are completely unnecessary. It's just the way they do their bureaucratic bullshit. You know, they create jobs that are, like, completely useless, you know, in the long run, in the long term.
Correct.
Jeez.
Yeah, and that's just me pointing out one little aspect of government waste. You know,
I mean, do you listen to Tom Woods?
I don't listen to him regularly, but yeah, I do sometimes. I'm quite familiar with him. Yeah.
Yeah. So I listened to one of his talks about government waste when it comes to military projects, and it's by, as you say, it's by design.
Yeah.
So, what's the big jet? The what is it? The F-16 or the
F-16?
Is it?
Are you talking about fighter jets or?
Yeah, the fighter jet that Trump threatened to veto.
Oh, yeah, that was F-16.
I think it's the F-16. Anyway, whatever it is, they talk about it. They talk about how these military contracts go out to, like, all these different military research bases around the country. And that money is employing people in the various states and whatever, right? So one guy is doing navigation, another one's doing alloys, sensors, whatever. So it's broken up all around the country, right? And as long as the jobs are in the state and there's government money funding it, no state is going to cancel the project, even if it's pointless.
Yeah.
No matter how much
yeah, for sure.
And it's by design.
It's crazy. Like, it gets really shady too when you dig into a lot of it. But there's just so much money the government pisses away. And then, like, I know the private sector does this too, but it would be just ridiculous. Like, I remember every friggin' so, you know, there, like, everybody knows there's the whole thing with budgets where, you know, like, you have to, if you don't spend your whole budget by the end of the fiscal year, you know, you don't get the same the same amount. So you have to, like, you know, like, towards the end of the fiscal year, everybody's spending like crazy. You know, it would just be shit like that. Like, I always remember being in the Army, and, like, towards the end of the fiscal year, suddenly we'd have, like, boxes of pins, like the reeling, like, a box full of, like, pins and all this other random shit. And then the fiscal year starts, and it's like, hey, we could use new desks. Oh, we don't have that in the budget. You know, it's just retarded shit like that. It would just be, like, all the fucking time. And I know that's not exclusive to the military or the government. That's just how all fucking anybody that has a fiscal budget. It's just, like, it would just be, like, the most laughable, like, dumb shit we would spend money on. You know, it would never be anything useful, like, ever. You'd squander the budget. You'd like penny pinch all year, and then at the very end of the fiscal year, you're like, oh fuck, we gotta get rid of all this money, and then you just spend it on a bunch of useless shit that nobody needs.
Correct.
That's why
the difference with the private sector is that it's limited by cash.
Yeah.
Right. So a business has only got so much profit, so much cash on hand.
Mhm.
With the state, it's pretty much unlimited.
Oh yeah.
There's no limit on it.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, Amos, did you want to touch on the healthcare in Taiwan while we still got the time, man?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. No, I kind of like, you know, wherever this conversation takes us. But just real quick, I guess I know a lot of people talk about we're kind of talking about the healthcare thing, and what I kept thinking about was like when you're sharing your story, Josh, and even with Brooke sharing his story, I keep being reminded of how Ben Shapiro talks about is the 3 categories of healthcare: universality, affordability, and quality. And if you take any 2 of those, you'll sacrifice the other. So one thing, which is a really, really good example, is Taiwan healthcare that I grew up in. Everyone got a universal healthcare card. It was just this card. I mean, it took them a while to have a more efficient system. You get this card; it's got a chip on it.
Yeah.
Scan, and it's universal. Scan it anywhere, and regular doctor visit would cost you $2. Dentist visit, if like I went to a dentist to get a root canal and filling, and the whole like each appointment I had to go to was maybe $4 or $5. So all in all, maybe no more than about $20 for the whole entire thing. So, you know, and you're not, there's no real insurance payment. It's just you're paying as part of, you know, the taxes and stuff. But just to give you guys a quick little, I've told you guys both, but it's more for the viewers here. 25 million people in Taiwan. It's about a sixth of the size of Minnesota, where I am. So population density wise, if Minnesota had the same population density, it would have 100 million people, 125 million people, which is just over a third of the U.S. population. So they're running universal health care. And when I was there, I had my fair share of interesting encounters, definitely. So to get into that, well, just a little bit of background on it. Basically, there's hospitals and clinics everywhere. It's all covered by the government. And I think I've asked you guys this, you know, the question: how many patients do you think a regular clinical doctor in a clinic would actually see in a day?
We talked about that. Yeah.
How many would you think, just for the viewers?
I want to hear what Brooks got to say.
Yeah, normally 20 is a good number.
Right, 20. Yeah, because you kind of figure, you know, however many. Some people would say, you know, some people say around 20 or 30, because that makes sense in the U.S. and that's our system.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying. I think when you and me talked, you asked me the same question, and I said on the VA, right. I think I said around 20, 30 probably. Like,
and even in the VA, a wonderfully efficient
system. Yeah, because I know where you're going with this, and I remember when you told me, it blew my fucking mind.
So the average Taiwan doctor can see around 150 to 200 patients a day.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I've heard some conversations with our mutual friend Brook that he's talked about how long a doctor actually has time to see someone in a visit is pretty short. There's studies on this that'll say it can be anywhere between 5 minutes to 25 minutes.
Yeah, and I think I told you, Amos, about like at the VA, like my last doctor I had, like he would be like backing out of the room as I'm still trying to talk to him because he's like on his way to his next appointment. Yeah.
Right. And I bet there's a lot of in-between time where some of these doctors probably do have to check on things and do things, but like they have that time. Whereas in Taiwan, it's like rapid fire, you know, going down an assembly line of just patients. So how is this done? There's no real time appointments. What happens is you go to a hospital that has however many doctors. You go into a giant waiting room with another 100 people in this waiting room. So it's a full waiting room. And there's like maybe 3 or 4 doors on each side of this sort of waiting room, which are doctor's offices. And you're just in and out, in and out. They all have little digital readouts, little number things, kind of like those old school like deli things where you get a number.
Yeah. Yep.
So you get a number.
We have those at the VA for like pharmacy and blood draw and stuff like that. Yeah.
And then for that I can kind of get because it's
it makes sense in those sections. Yeah.
Those are very basic, sort of just doing that. But for a doctor, really? Like now we're numbers, we're sort of cattle almost. So,
no, but dude, okay, like I remember our conversation, and I'm hoping you're gonna touch on like the whole like order you would go in, like how.
Oh yeah. No, I'm gonna share the story.
Okay, because man, I'm remembering it. I'm just like, you blew my fucking mind when you talked to me about this. I was just like, holy shit! I thought I had it.
Right. So basically, so you get a number. Let's say I'm number 50, and I'd kind of figure, okay, the doctor starts seeing patients at about 8 in the morning. So I kind of do the math in my head, and I'd say, okay, I want to get there maybe around 11. I don't remember exactly how we did it. We were more used to it then. Yeah. We go in, we sit down. Oh, okay, we're at 42 or whatever. I sit down, and I'm waiting, and then 50 comes up, and I go in. So I walk into the doctor's office, and one of the many doors that I'm walking into this conveyor belt. I walk into the doctor's office, and there's 2 people ahead of me. So you walk in the door, and there's going to be a nurse sitting there with a patient, entering in any new information, updating his charts, his patient information. Behind her, ahead of that person, is the doctor with another patient. So I remember I shared this with the redheaded libertarian, and she's has some experience in healthcare. I even talked with Opposite Supremacy. They know a little bit about it, and they were like, "Whoa, like HIPAA laws, privacy. You can't do any You're in the same room as 2 other people, and you get to hear or at least get a bit of a whiff of information of their private medical information. So the doctor is examining this guy. He has a 5-minute slot, behind ahead of the 5-minute slot with the nurse.
Yeah.
And then so you sit down, and the guy, with the doctor goes out, and then another person comes in behind you. Right. So now your information is free for 2 people. You move ahead. Your information is free to 3 different people already, and it goes even further than that, depending upon what sort of care you're getting. So, where I come into this, I was still pretty little when I was under all this. I came back to the States back when I was around 12 or 13, and when I was over there, I was around 10 or 11, or maybe I was around 10. I had this allergic reaction to something I ate, and I was broke out in hives, and I had to get some sort of medication to basically deal with the initial reaction. I wasn't in any pain; it was just itchy, and I just didn't feel right. So we go into the doctor, and same kind of process. They kind of get you in there. I mean, we could go in and the day of. There were still ER kind of things. So it's like a cross between universal healthcare and still kind of some Western aspects.
Oh.
1 second.
Did you order pizza or something?
Oh man, there he goes. I mean, you heard this story, right? I mean, it's absolutely nuts.
Yeah, no, I remember when we had a conversation, just me and him, on Hangouts before we did a few weeks ago, and I remember him telling me the story, and I was just like, geez, especially when he told me how many patients he would see in a day, I was like, what? That's fucking ridiculous. Crazy. That is so insane. Yeah, and it's sad because people they don't think about stuff like that. They only look at the positives, the positive aspects of a government-run health care.
Yeah, it's free and nobody gets bankruptcy, even if they die. At least. Right? There's no bankruptcy.
But there's always it's free, but they don't take into account how much they'll be paying for taxes. But then they're always well, I'm glad to pay more taxes if it helps people have better health care. I'm like, well, why wouldn't you want to just do a more local community thing?
Charity,
where you do charity. When my daughter was born in Wisconsin, we wouldn't have ever been we would probably it would have taken us forever to pay off her bill. We just didn't have I didn't have that great of a job at that point. We didn't have a lot of money. And they had this charity thing, this local community thing. They would donate money, and then they would you could apply, and if you met their requirements, they would pay off a chunk of your healthcare bill just because.
Totally agree.
And I was like, why don't we do more things like that on the lower state level, not even just state level, community level. charity-based programs where you're able to like actually like the money you put in actually go. I mean, because like the government's going to tax you. They could take like $100 from you, but only like in the end of the day, like $20 is gonna, maybe $20 is like $5 is going to reach that person that needs it. You know, like we have a meme actually we made. I wrote it a while back. It was one of our first memes we did for SNL where I was like, you can give a man $1, like, or you can give a man $5 to like help him out, or you can pay the government $5 to give that same man 25 cents. Which one sounds more like compassion to you? You know, it's insane. Amos, are you?
Yeah.
I'd love to hear the rest of what's
going on. It was the NSA breaking in. No, something with
they're trying to shut it down, huh?
Exactly. No, it was the maintenance people. They had to check something. I guess it was something going on in the building. No, it was like a quick minute. Anyways, where was I? So, broke out in hives.
You're broken out in hives, yeah.
Yeah, so I had to go into the hospital. Go in and meet in with a doctor, and it's a similar situation. You know, there's other people in the nurse's office, in the doctor's office with you, and like in most like hospital rooms and stuff, there's like always like curtain and stuff, like you could for privacy in case the doctor has to examine you. I mean, even like in the States, if there's like a situation where you're like in a place where even like a guy has to like take his shirt off, they still like close curtain.
Yeah.
Like even though like it's just a guy with a shirt off, whatever.
Sorry, I got a cat trying to like assault my feet.
It's an assault cat. You got to ban it. But so I go in and the doctor, you know, examines me and he says, "Okay, we need to administer a suppository."
Right.
I'm like, and here's a little 10-year-old Amos sitting in this doctor's office, 2 other strangers in there, and there's a nurse and the doctor, and they're like, "We got to administer this." So I had to pull my pants down, and they had to put it in, and
put it in your ass.
Exactly.
For the viewers.
I was, and so here I am walking out of the doctor's office. I mean, pants on at this point.
I should hope so.
But you kind of think of this like there's just the culture. I don't know if it's just because of a very collectivist culture. Like there's no real privacy and individualism. That people don't really care as much. I mean, there's believe it or not, there's an actual problem with like public urination problems and stuff. So people just don't, the sense of privacy, private space, personal space and stuff like that, no, doesn't exist. So like a person in a hospital, like over here, we value privacy. We're valuing these HIPAA laws that, you know, doctor-patient confidentiality, like you can get a lot of trouble if anything happens. I mean, I used to work with someone who was he was part-time working with me at this place. He was a paramedic, and he was out working out of the same paramedic sort of dispatch place. Like they have some like stations where they dispatch the ambulances. He was in that same place when they got the call for Prince, when Prince died here in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And so he knew who it was, but he couldn't tell me because of his laws. And that's how serious it is. You just don't tell anyone about this. So, but in Taiwan, you know, if you're doing whatever to, you know, take off your shirt, pull your pants down, do things like that, if a doctor doesn't pull the curtains, if the doctor doesn't, you know, doesn't value your privacy, there's no real issue. I mean, you kind of talked about it, Josh, with the whole. There's no real repercussions like it is here. Like, you can't really sue for malpractice for a government doctor.
yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous.
So it's like, you know, you were in pain and on the verge of killing yourself. Here I am pulling my pants down in front of random people as well as a doctor and a nurse. You know, I don't know if you've had any experiences, Brooke.
No, this is the irony, right? So I come back to Trinidad and Tobago, basically the third world, and I do all of my medical stuff when I'm here because I'm not fucking trusting the NHS, right?
Right.
And seeing as some of my most popular videos are basically criticisms of the NHS, and that might be soon categorized as hate speech. It's quite likely that I don't really want to trust myself in the hands of the NHS system. So I'm going private when I get back. I'm going to get some. There is like a quasi private insurance thing, so I'm going to sort that out when I get back.
I had when I was in the Army, one of my back problems first started surfacing. The doctor had to give me like a rectal exam.
Yeah.
You know, and he like lubed up his 2 fingers and was like, you know, like bend over. And I'm just sitting there like, are you sure you're a doctor? And I remember going back to my unit afterwards, and my first sergeant's like, "How was your appointment?" And I was like, he gave me the old 2 inside. I was like, I felt kind of weird because he didn't even buy me dinner or anything like that. And first sergeant was laughing his ass off about that. But yeah, it's weird. Yeah, there's some things that sometimes going to the doctor can be very uncomfortable sometimes.
Totally. I'm not a doctor person. Like I don't really get sick. I don't like taking meds. I don't like any of it. I mean, I'm getting older now, so I got to watch some stuff. But I'm with you.
Dude, like I got a bag full of meds I have to take for various things, and then I'm at the VA like once a week at the very least for different stuff. But
sure.
It's not. I mean, like I do think also like I help run a support group for mental health veterans, like PTSD and stuff like that, to help veterans out as much as I can, things like that. But I also do things like music therapy, which is just music therapy. You just sit in this chair, and there has like it tilts you all the way back, so your back is almost parallel with the ground, and there are speakers in the back and underneath the legs and by your head and everything. And I'm like, you can bring in like I have a playlist on my phone. I do like we just shuffle play it, and you just sit there and just listen to music for an hour. It is so goddamn relaxing, and like it loosens up the muscles and stuff like that, like the vibrations in the speakers like help loosen up muscles, and I just feel like I feel really relaxed after those sessions. Like they're really, really great. I do a lot of different stuff with the VA. Like there's all the mental health stuff I do at the VA is like in a whole separate building, and I feel like anytime I go to that little building, like I'm fine. But it's when I go to the main VA, I start getting freaked out. Like today is my first MRI I've had since I had the screws put in my spine. And even though they assure me that, like it's safe for an MRI, I'm just waiting for like my spine to rip out in the middle of the MRI or some shit like that.
Giant magnets, man.
Yeah. Like Amos saw it, like he saw the little X-ray I had because you can only see 2 from the side view, but there's these big ass screws in my spine.
That's correct. You got to get your YouTube video going with these stories, man. Just
I know. I need to. I've been telling these stories here and there for a while. Like that's what's going to be great. Like me and my brother, when we talk politics too, we'll talk for hours too. Like, we'll be able to fill up like an hour time slot with no problem whatsoever.
So I was just doing a little bit of quick math here. For people who are like really want to get a good picture of like trying to do universal healthcare. I mean, so Taiwan, 25 million people, give or take. So I did a bit like if the population density were the same in all of the U.S., 6.4 billion people in the U.S.
Wow.
Now imagine a system trying to like just for a visual picture of like people are like, okay, the U.S. has 320 million people. Universal healthcare is already going to be an insurmountable task. Now you're looking at some of these small countries where they're just barely trying to pull it off, and you've kind of figured that proportionally, it's like no, not just U.S. being 320 million, and they're like there's definitely differences I think, but I mean just
sure.
There's a lot to be said when people looking at these other countries trying to pull it off and saying the U.S. is going to do it. I mean. What is it, Brooke? The NHS is one of the top employers in the world.
It's the 4th largest employer in the world.
Yeah. Correct. It's just insane.
And they still can't keep up.
My wife, she originally wanted to work at the VA. She got her degree in she got her minor in like psychology or not her minor, sorry, shit. She got her bachelor's in like psychology and philosophy. And then she got her master's in marriage and family therapy. She originally wanted to work at the VA, and now she works at a private practice, and she's like, she's so much happier because she's like, the form of therapy she does there, the VA doesn't offer or doesn't even authorize, because the VA is like so strict about how they do things. And she's like, you know, I could be working at the VA. Like, she wanted to work at the VA because she wanted to be able to help veterans because of her time with me. And she's like, I could be working at the VA and I wouldn't be able to help veterans the way I want to. You know, but she's like, now where I'm at now, she's actually has the opportunity to work with veteran spouses more. And if she has a veteran come through, she's able to slide her scale down to make it easier for a veteran to come see her. You know, like, she has that power of her own. You know, she has so much more freedom in private practice than she could ever possibly have at the VA. And like, my wife does what's called narrative therapy, and the VA usually likes to do what they call evidence-based therapy. And I remember, like, my wife I was talking about narrative therapy in one of the group sessions I did, and the guy that runs the whole thing, he was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that. And I was like, yeah, but the VA doesn't like you to do stuff like that. And he was like, I don't give a fuck what the VA likes. If I like it, I'm gonna do it. I'm like, hell yeah, dude. But yeah, there's like, the VA is all like, they're shitty about stuff like that. They don't want you being able to do like going off on your own or do things to help your patient, you know, if you're not like sticking with their standard just bullshit evidence-based therapy stuff that just doesn't work in the end.
You're right.
Yeah.
Josh, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, man. I think we're coming up on that time.
Real quick before we go here, I wanted to kind of show everyone. So for everyone who is curious about Sarcasm and Liberty, let's see here. Just gonna do a quick little. Oh yeah, there we go. So if you guys are curious, this is Sarcasm Liberty's Facebook. Sorry, not Facebook. Twitter page. Yep, follow him here on Sarcasm_Liberty, as well as guys can check out his website, which I got open up here. Whoops.
Oops, I can't be reached. No.
Here we go. Sarcasmandliberty.com.
And for anybody listening, we are, if you go down to I Have the Best Words, that's where we do all of our articles and stuff like that.
Right here.
Funny Libertarian has written some stuff. Like, people have submitted poetry before. If you just have a rant you want to write down, if you like, there's Concerned Cis White Male, Funny Libertarian did one. That's a satire one. He also did Free Speech and Comedy, talking about comics fights for free speech. And there's so many, like, it can be a very serious article, it can be a goofy article, it can just be getting something off your chest. If you want to write something for Sarcasm and Liberty, let us know. You know, like, shoot me a message, a DM. My DMs are always open. I can't guarantee that I'll check them right away, but my DMs are always open on Twitter, or you can try messaging the Facebook page. Which actually, if you message the Facebook page, you have a better chance of getting in contact with us a lot faster. But so yeah, like, we're always open. If you have meme ideas too, we're always open. Like, to hearing what anybody has to offer. Here goes my phone.
Okay.
Sorry about that. It's too far away. I'm not going to go pick it up.
But thanks everyone for joining us. I know we had a couple of viewers on and off throughout the stream, which is good. So we definitely had a few reach there. But yeah, check out Sarcasm and Liberty, as well as comment and subscribe to our channel and his channel. All the info will be in the description afterwards. I'll be adding all that in there, website, Twitter.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. This was really fun. I'd love to come on again in the future. Anytime you want me on, just let me know.
Let us know.
My schedule gets crazy here and there, as you've seen, but if I'm able to make it on, I would always love to be on again. I absolutely love talking to you guys.
Awesome.
Here's the culprit here.
Oh, brilliant. Hey, now it's a cat video. We'll go viral.
Any closing remarks there, Brooke? Anything you wanted to kind of close off with?
Josh, thank you for your service, bro. I know you've probably seen some crazy stuff, and keep up the good fight, my friend. I mean, we haven't had much interaction, but it was such a pleasure. And I look forward to staying in touch with you and having you on again many times in the future.
Definitely. Me too.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. Like I said, everything included in the description for Sarcasm Liberty, and below. Yeah. So yeah, Tune in next week as we hopefully will have maybe another guest. I am going to be speaking with someone later today. So, yeah. Thanks for watching, guys.
Bye,
Take
everyone.
care, guys. Bye.